Rebel Devs Podcast, a show that challenges conventional thinking in the tech industry. Each episode features conversations with solutionists who have taken unconventional approaches to problem solving, pushing the boundaries of what's possible in their respective fields. Join the devolution.
Hey, Rebel Dev listeners, this is Tom May coming at you at some point. You don't know when, because we record this when you don't know, and we release this when we decide. So, there we are, typical tech people. Today, as always, I have Jonah, my partner in crime. And Jonah, you and I are just coming off of VeeamON. Are you recovered yet or what?
I am mostly recovered, I would say. I mean, I'm in the massive slew of home projects again, redecorating the house, getting it ready before crawfish boil this weekend for Mother's Day / my birthday.
I had a friend of mine that used to say that's not allowed in IT. IT is going to meetings all day during your job, and then your real IT job starts after hours. So you may not be a real IT person by that test, just to let you know. But did I see that you dropped a new blog post out there about something in the home lab?
Well, actually 2 posts. One's going to get promoted on social media right after this recording because yesterday was the write-up finally finishing out what did I do in the home lab and smart home in 2024. And, now we're almost halfway through 2025, and I did a bunch in February and March. So had to sum up some of that. And then I've got to dive into some other topics, just start churning through the blog backlog now that I'm through VeeamON.
Very cool. Well, I'm going to transition to our guest, but before we do, I know you struggle to put out more blog posts and whatnot. I'm really bad on my blogs, but talking about the Veeam community, and Rick's going to be introduced here in a moment, like guys like Chris Childerhouse and Nico Stein and those guys, and Shane, man, they are like blogging machines. So now that I've totally given credit to the community, let's have the guy that heads it all, Rickatron, Rick Vanover from Veeam. Sir, welcome to our program.
Hey, thanks to be back on again. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Jonah. Yeah, those few, as well as both of you and so many more, really make the Veeam community special. I was just talking in the pregame. I don't know how you guys do it all. I truly don't.
I think it's fun. I think if we could all find a way to get paid to do what we do, it'd be awesome. But then it kind of negates the whole community thing. Then we're like sleeper agents. So no, absolutely. And you, sir, we were talking about came off of VeeamON. Jonah and I had some downtime, but you've been a traveling fool, if you will, like living out of a suitcase, man.
Yeah. So, VeeamON is Veeam's biggest moment of the year, and we put a lot of work into it. I have a kind of a unique additional honor burden that I put along with it. I was using air quotes for the podcast listeners in the sense of honor burden. It's an extra assignment. So I have a unique perspective. I'm part of the content team that helps form the experience. I try to be the voice of reason. There's a lot of marketing people, a lot of people who don't use our products, right? And so there's just right there. Do you use Veeam products? Yes or no will tell you a lot about how relevant you can make a content experience. Okay, so I'm on that team, yes. And I try to bring the voice of reason, and I think we do operate a successful VeeamON franchise because then it feeds around the world. But a lot of times people are asking me, it's like, how is this VeeamON compared to others? Which one's your favorite? And it's like asking the person who does the dishes at a restaurant what to order on the menu. Do not ask me because I have a very, very different perspective on things. But you're right, Tom. I'm right off of VeeamON, and then no joke, I was here at the office on Thursday right after doing stuff, and then at it again Friday, and then I was off to RSA conference. Oh, let's squeeze in a customer meeting on the way to RSAC in California, and then I was just yesterday back from Nutanix NEXT, and I'm actually tomorrow starting what I'm calling VeeamOn-off, which is my little bit of vacation that I need a break, but I am running low on the tank for sure.
Well, my VeeamON experience is so much different than others. This year was completely different for me, and I'll touch that. But my experience with VeeamON was being in the community, being a Vanguard, kind of getting those previews, knowing what's going on. So if you're not in the program, get in there. It has many great features. But I would go to VeeamON and I would sit with the CEO. I would sit with the marketing director. I'd sit with the sales director. I'd be there a CIO back in the day when I was with Global Data Vault. And they would be like, "This is the most amazing announcement." And I would literally be there and be like, "What did you hear? What do you think that meant?" Right? And they would say something offshoot and we would have to translate out. That's how cool it was. Moving into more of a CEO role, I'm like, well, I'm technical. I get what they're saying, and that's pretty cool. But this year was awesome for me because of Southwest Airlines. I got delayed in the airport in San Diego. I kid you not. I think I got there at like 11. We didn't fly out till like 8 p.m. And I was like, good Lord. And we were taking a little mini vacation to Vegas. I was like, let's lay over in Vegas and have just a great weekend. We'll go out Thursday, detune our Veeam off, if you will. Well, I ended up tripping across all these people that were coming off of VeeamON as customers. And I spoke to 2 or 3. And honestly, I was curious because I asked them how they and what they thought about VeeamON. Was it your first? Was it your 8th? And they're like, no, it was my first. And I was interested because for me, I kind of like the older ones a little bit more. Not that the newer ones aren't good, but I'm thinking it's more because it was a different experience because it was like number 1, number 3, right? These people were just stoked, man. They were like, "Oh, this was so amazing. There was this and that. I can't believe we got into a partner breakout session and there's the C-suite and this, da, 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 da." And they're like, it was just so amazing. And then there was one that was really interesting, which I thought was, I talked to them. They've been to every single VeeamON ever. And I was like, wow. And I was like, who are you? And I'm not going to close their name. And they're just like, I don't know, man. I think that Veeam is a little out of touch with making it back to the MSP level. And I'm like, well, have you talked to this person? Have you talked to a Rick Johnson? Have you this, that? And like, well, yeah, kind of. And they kind of get it, but it's not translating in our business. I said, well, I got nothing to do. You're not in my market. I've been there. And we worked through a couple things in the airport there. And they're like making phone calls back to the office. I'm like, did you know that we can do this, this, and this? We can that, that, that. And it was like, they heard the concepts, but they never had like the rubber meets the road sort of thing. And I was like, well, that was interesting. They almost were missing that business layer, which is what I thought was being way more addressed in these couple of years. So I'm like stumped, man, when I'm like, I don't know where we're going with things as a VeeamON culture. And I was just shocked. I was like, it really did hit the mark. So Rick, great job with it. I mean, that was
Yeah, and you got to bring everybody up. That's the thing. That's the goal that I take is everybody's going to come up a level. It's a level up endeavor. That's the goal of going to VeeamON. And this year was one big difference. And this was probably a miss, but also there's a whole different conversation about being next to the holiday. But we didn't have the VMCE in-person instruction or the weekend before, but that wouldn't have worked so close to the holiday. So that was one just side note on level up, because sometimes it literally is truly leveling up and being ready to take the exam. Super good feedback. And, it's really tricky because the C-suite, they set out some priorities. We got to hit on this. We got to hit on this. We got to hit on this. But also we can't underrepresent that. We can't forget about that. And, we've made commitments to that too. So it's like, it's the world's trickiest puzzle to get the balance right. And one thing we struggle a lot with is we have 2 days to work with, and you think about, I tell this to people all the time, above and beyond VeeamON. I say, all we have is our time and our attention. And if I'm going to come to VeeamON for 2 full days, I got to come out on Monday and I got to leave on Thursday. That's a lot. That's a commitment. Even if you're, in Texas to California, not too bad, or Ohio. We had people from the Middle East make the trip. We had people from all regions around the world, Europe, South America, they all made the trip. And a lot of organizations have different objectives on what they want to get out of it. And so I think in the end, everybody levels up, but it's really tough to dial up exactly what that persona needs, especially when you start segmenting into partners. I'll be the first to say partnerships are in Veeam's DNA, period. And whether it's a service provider partner, we have some opportunities with managed service providers, which is a little bit different than a cloud service provider, right? And we're we're working on that, and there's a team being formed to grow on that. And another name would be Vito. If you had Vito's in that realm. And then there's also, resellers and GSIs, and there's distributors, and there's alliances, and there's professional services, and I'm probably forgetting one. So all of them kind of need different things. And when you think about that partner breakout, I hope that they were correctly represented across the different, I don't want to say swim lanes, but another thing that's interesting about Veeam is I think I named 5 or 6 different kind of big types of partners. It's not unlikely, or it's not uncommon for an organization to identify to 1, 2, or maybe even 3 of those categories, right? So, and, there's also education partners now. I forgot about that one. So there's 7. So it's not uncommon for some to multi-identify, right? So it's quite the puzzle, for sure.
Interesting. My favorite part of it was people were calling us the Veeam family. So you had Jonah out there, you had Tom out there. People know us a little bit more. Then my wife Jess is out there, and she's a VMCE now. She went through the whole Women in Tech or Women in Green, whatever that program was, and certed on up and through. And now she's starting to do some more community stuff in there. Then we bump into an internal Veeamer, Randy Weiss, and he's like, "Hey guys, that's my nephew. That's my great nephew. That's my, and it was like, wow." And everybody was like, "You guys are like a family around this." And we're like, Veeam has just really worked for us. I know it sounds weird, like a family. And it was kind of cool walking around VeeamON, having people shout out about that. And we're like, wow, look at that. We have like our own little.
So my DNA comment isn't too far off.
Yeah, well, when my wife worked at Southwest Airlines back in the day, there was actually a wall that honored like family that worked in the company, like multi-generational. They were like, "Oh, these are people that have grown. We're a family, but look, we're really," and like what Jim Tedesco's daughter a few years ago came to work in, and I was at an event with her out in San Diego, and it was so cool seeing her command that room and whatnot. And I mean, Jim, I call the fortune cookie of wisdom. Like, I love his LinkedIn's. Like, he's the most inspirational dude ever. It must be cool to have him internally to you all for those things. So,
Yeah, I love Jimmy T. He reads a lot, shares a lot. He does this video thing internally called Ask the Coach, and he's pulls it. I've been on, and so many other great folks at Veeam have been on, and like a bidirectional wisdom share. And one thing I admire about Jim is that he can walk into any scenario and bring value and in perspective and such. And what's also incredibly interesting is he started his journey at Veeam. He joined in October of 2014, right before the very first VeeamON. Like literally, that was week 1 or 2, and he had a mission to lead our sales for the U.S., or I should say, the Americas. And then as we, anybody who's been in sales with a hyper growth company, you change your territories, your assignments, your mappings, those types of things. And he moved into what we call our global customer success, which he's got global responsibility for the existing customer base. And it's kind of funny because, we've got scenarios. There's one individual who's no longer with Veeam, but he was like truly one of the first 10 or 15 people. When he started, he handled all sales west of the Mississippi. He lived in the Los Angeles area. And by the time he left, he only handled commercial customers on the northwest side of Los Angeles County. It just condensed down like wild.
so I'm sure that's scary as a sales guy too, because when they do that to you, right? What do? They increase that quota still, if you will. So,
Well, but it's funny because I know plenty of people that they never leave the DFW Metroplex for, like that are in account roles and stuff, So some territories always have enough client base. So that's also, 2007, 8, 9 Veeam was a very different Veeam of 2025.
I mean, I moved to Texas in '07, and I was looking at work, and I was like, there's oil and gas, there's tech, there's this. And I'm coming from New York, which is like the world. But it's right before that big crash out. Like I saw the signs coming, we moved. And then I was talking to Jason Buffington, I think like 3 or 4 months ago. And he was like, we've targeted where we believe that tech triangle right there, Dallas, Houston, Austin, just that area is going to become the next Silicon Valley. So many companies are moving to Texas in those areas, and research and development. We have Space City popping up and all these other companies just coming in. And I was like, dumb luck on my side, but I'm curious what Texas will look like in 20 years in our neck of the woods because it will change so much. So it's
Well, you see that in a lot of places across the U.S. I mean, I live in Central Ohio, and we launched AWS US East 2 here. But then now I turn around and Google, and then there's a Facebook data center, and then Intel's building that manufacturing facility here. Oh yeah, and there's Veeam. But it's like there's so many things going on here, and then I've heard, you know, similar stories across different parts of the country. It is wild. I wonder, I need to go get an analyst number. What's the whole, TAM of technology, and if you think about when you start including consumer tech and things like that, it's wild how integrated it can be in the cloud. And in fact, just over the way here, I'm looking out my window. They're building a data center. I don't know who it is. It's not a hyperscaler data center, but it's a data center. And I'm really curious who it's going to be when it's done. But it's just funny when you see these things become next door. In fact, every time I land at the airport, if we're landing from that one direction, you fly right over this fab from Intel that is being built. It's massive. I've never seen a construction something that big. It's just when you see those types of infrastructure things happening, I mean, the technologist in all of us has to really, really just think that's really cool.
Yeah, yeah. And it is even so. I was talking to a friend of mine who has nothing to do with technology. And at one point, she was like, well, I really want to get into technology. How would you suggest? And I was like, man, 10 years ago, I could be like, find a certification, go and learn whatever. Now, technology is so broad. There's like true tech, there's like auxiliary tech, as I'll call it, that you're in a supporting role, but you're still teched out. Really, it's like, how do you gauge somebody? And you almost have to do like in high school. Remember, they used to do those, what are you going to be when you grow up sort of things. And they're like, Tom, sorry, you're a garbage man. And you're like, man, this sucks. And some guys like, I'm a professor. Well, you know what? Both of those exist in tech all day long. My younger son went into the National Guard and he ended up in the Corps of Engineers and he was going to be like a dirt mover. Right. And I was like, man, that's interesting because, you're going to learn how to run that heavy equipment and whatnot. And my buddy, he's been on the podcast, is a senior superintendent for Turner Construction. They're like the biggest construction firm in the US. And so, he's done like TCU Stadium, he's done skyscrapers, he's done a lot of data center work. And he said, in construction, we're even getting to, oh, you want this project? Well, you want this guy because their claim to fame is building a data center. He said, believe it or not, even in construction, there are dirt movers that are actually like your data center guys because they know how to level and build that foundation right for a data center versus a school and construction are starting to make like tiger teams of tech guys, public buildings and things. And I was like, who would have ever thought that a guy running a dozer would be tied so heavily to technology? It's crazy.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. So long story, but just you know, you, it was a family friend, and I was talking to them, and I had met their kid, and just it was maybe a 4 or 5 year old kid, young boy, uh, incredible imagination, and the conversation came, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And the kid said, "I want to be a construction worker." And the mom almost felt a little bit embarrassed, like, like, "I want you to be a doctor, a lawyer, or engineer, or something." And she didn't say anything, but I went in and I said, the construction worker of the future is going to be so critical, highly technical. It's like trying to work on your car nowadays. I can't do it anymore. It's too technical. So you're not wrong, Tom.
Well, I laugh when I went to high school and, that last millennia, that makes me feel so old. So I love joking saying it. I remember we were all like, we're going to go work in technology and make all this money and blah, blah, blah. And all the dumb kids got sent to like Votech and they were like, we'll teach you how to sheetrock and whatever. I go back from my high school reunion, too many years to tell. And like the dumb kids, they're like, I own 4 businesses. I'm a decamillionaire. I'm a whatever. And I'm just like, I've done well in technology, but it's crazy because every day, like in Texas, do you think the most important person in this world is not the guy that fixes your air conditioning? All day long, like, and they're super tech too, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Yeah, but it was almost the same thing when I was going through high school. I mean, you remember I was in some of the advanced, AP and IB classes, and some of it was scheduling, but they had the offsite career and technical education academy for the high schools in our district. And I could not get into the computer networking classes, the aerospace classes, the robotics classes I was trying to get into, where I would have walked out with like CCNAs and other things like that. And what were they doing? They were sending the people in like the remedial math classes to all of that and the auto body shop and go learn to be a hairstylist and walk out with your license to go work at somewhere with that. And, if you weren't in those advanced classes, you could get in the CTE classes all day long.
It was frustrating because I remember fighting with the administration with Jonah because I literally said, does he need Shakespeare 4? Does he need Spanish 5? If he can walk out with his A+ cert and a CCNA, he's walking into a job all day long. And it was sad. And I remember talking to the assistant super of technology, and this person was like, wait, we dumped millions of dollars into this program. The guidance counselors are doing what? And so they were supposed to go back and try to rectify why not incorporate that into these advanced degrees? Because in Texas, we have the IB degree, so it's a higher level, very specialized thing. But yeah, it's a crazy world we live in. So I don't know.
Yeah, and what do I have to show for it? I walked out with like 66 or 69 credits, but only actually like 20 of them were applicable to a computer science degree.
I hear that. I mean, when I went to school, there weren't really IT curriculums. I ended up with a business degree because my only other option was computer science. And I really didn't want to program anything. But my buddies and I were I'm old, web crawler and, IRC and things like that over like 2400 baud modems growing up around IBM. And, we're finding all these little just pop up little networking closets here, there, and everywhere, creating the local internet and stuff. You couldn't walk into school and do that at all. So I'm glad at least there's more of that out there. But I don't know. We can switch back to Veeam, I guess. But that's what the listeners like. They never know what they're going to get here. So,
Well, it's about being a risk taker. I'm not a risk taker. I'd never go start a business, you know? So you think about some of those folks that, did good or whatever. That's not me. I'm never going to go start a business. I just not a risk taker, which is actually also amazing given that I'm in the data protection business, which is I don't want to take risks with data, right? And then you just have to be self-aware. But then I look at my kid, right, which is kind of dangerous because he wants to work at Veeam and he knows how to use Veeam and he is 11 and he is building computers and, I'll hear, hey, Dad, do you need this old laptop? I said, no. And a half hour later, I said, hey, Dad, I made it a Chromebook, and stuff like that. So like now, great little milestone there, but I'm like, dude, okay, don't just go grabbing computers and making them Chromebooks. I mean, I'm backing everything up, but I don't want to be undoing all these things. But, and I think that's cool, but there's no way I would give myself a 0% F minus on predicting what Rick Vanover at age 17, 18 would be to where he is now, though I'm happy with where I am, but I had no clue. And it had nothing to do with the technology revolution, because I'd say students today AI is that one. And there will be others that come into play that change the game. So it's like, you just got to be willing to, respond to the conditions as they happen. So never look back. It's okay.
My dad always used to say, ask everybody what their degree is in, and you'll find more often than not, they do nothing to do with their degree. It's always some other sideline. He was like, I have a marketing degree. I worked on a project to bring Bud Light as a marketing campaign out of our college thesis. And he's like, I have no Bud Light money, but he was like, I started a car lot. I started a repair shop. I had a body shop. I got into real estate. I had all these different things. And the only thing that, like, how I got involved was as a kid, he was like, what are these computers? They could probably do something around here. My kid better know. But what you're talking about, your son, the other guy on this podcast was the bane of my existence as a kid. He would hack and rip through stuff in innocence. Like, hey, Dad, I figured out that I can't get on the internet because there's no default gateway. And it's like, well, son, that was on purpose. But now it's like, great, now I got to do this. So, people used to question what I would do with technology with Jonah growing up. And I was like, you know what? Still be outdoors. He was a scouter. He was outdoor. He played some sports and stuff. But it was like, healthy tech was good. And now I'm proud of it because I'm like, he's his own man. He's out there. He's Veeam Vanguard. He's a VMCEA, 25 years old, heading up some product at Cyber Fortress. I'm like, that's pretty cool. Like maybe that was a thing. And I think he's happy. I don't know. Maybe he wants to go be one of the construction guys on some days. Who knows?
Youngest Vanguard ever.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely question what if I went and did construction. I like to tinker on my house. I like to tinker on my car. I was out till like 2 in the morning last night trying to get a couple things working with ForeScan because of some issues I have from upgrading the radio years back so I could have that CarPlay in my truck because it was a year too old to have CarPlay stock. And, I like to do it, but I think if I had to do it for a living, I would be very frustrated and stressed out by it and not want to do it. It's nice to not have to work on a deadline or churn things in and out constantly with those things and just go at my own pace.
What do they say? The shoemaker's children have no shoes. That's a saying for a reason. But I'm going to jump into all things Veeam, and I will just share some of my highlights. I won't dive into them. You guys can comment on there. But being a Linux guy, oh yeah. Like I was all about that, and watching the demos of the actual ISOs hit and the multi-roles and how to install it. I was just geeked all day long. And I'm sitting in that session, and it was still kind of marketing-y. Like it was kind of like we're releasing it. So you're like, am I going to see under the hood? Let me tell you, those guys knocked it out of the park. They still dove in there hard. I was so impressed because I thought, oh, I'm just going to get this product delineation. And some of the people in the room wanted to get rid of their Windows licensing. I get it. I know the power of Linux. I love it. And I was just like, oh, this is so bad, man. This is just amazing. And, hearing questions out there, will there be an upgrade path? Well, it's not yet, but there will be. And then there'll be this and hypothetically 13.1 maybe. And you're just like, oh, now I want 13.1. Like we're not even out at 13 and guys, I think that was the most awesome sauce I saw. Like the other stuff was cool, but I was like, oh my God, there's actually an interface you can boot right off of the ISO to do things. Holy crap, the OS craps out. They've built it into the ISO to be able to fix it. Holy crap, Veeam dies for some reason. Oh, you can recover that back. Oh, you're retaining your data. And I'm like, oh, this is so amazing all day long because coming from the cloud world, we've all lived in the Veeam world where it was like you can fix everything locally, and then if it doesn't work, just redo it, and it would break the chain to the cloud, and you have retention and space. And they were like, no, 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 you can just rebuild and the data stays. And I'm like, holy crap! The level that went into this was by far the coolest thing. I cannot wait to go out. Like Linux proxies were cool. I love hardened repositories. I use them. I'm like, oh, this is like, I'm already like, wait, we can bring redundant Veeam servers in and run them on Linux and lower my customers' costs. And like, I've even gone back to my customers just to share with it. And for me, it's increased revenue and professional services, but it's altruistic. I don't have to walk in and be like, just buy something expanded. I could be like, this is really cost savings. It's redundancy. It's healthier. It's more powerful. It has all of these things that you need. Do this, and long-term TCO is going down. So knocked it out of the park with that, Rick. Like that whole thing, loved it all day long.
Yeah, I love it. It's by far been the most fan favorite type of preview announcement that we have from the event stack. And just to kind of tell everyone where that is. What is this? Well, especially Veeam backup and replication. And for now, let's just omit the orchestrator and Veeam 1 products, but there will be a time that they roll into this too. Okay. But let's just say in the next 6+ months, it will be just BNR, proxies and repositories too. What is this? Well, what we showed was what we're calling a Veeam software appliance. And we would distribute an ISO that would install Veeam backup and replication on a hardened, purpose-built appliance. Now it is Rocky Linux and it is pre-configured. There is one option, install or two, or repair, maybe exit, and then what product do you want, BNR or proxy or repository. That's it. And then boom, you have a Veeam. That's it. That's all there is to it. Now, what's interesting about this is that it is what kind of made this really attractive to us is that the same code base that exists in Windows, the .NET framework can be recompiled on Linux. And that has been a super big gateway for us. Now, there's a lot of QA, make no mistake, to get there. But this will be Veeam backup and replication, not running on Windows, but deployed as a appliance in either a virtual machine, so that ISO can boot and configure upon a virtual machine, or it can be on bare metal. And we already have the Veeam Ready Server qualification published with 5 platforms in it. And then going forward, I think it's reasonable to expect some of our storage partners are going to grab onto this and go. So I'm excited.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think you guys already have one of them announced. Yeah, I mean, Linux will be good for us from a licensing perspective. And, as a Linux guru, I like it. But really what we're more excited for is probably the high availability. As a service provider where we potentially have hundreds of customers writing Cloud Connect backup or Cloud Connect replication to that one BBR server. In a world where we're looking to move to S3 compatible storage for the back end, where we're looking at things like high availability vCenters and potentially vVol, and then we're already using Cloud Connect gateway pools and looking at Postgres with high availability to replace Microsoft SQL Server clusters, it means we can essentially start patching our systems with very little, if not zero, downtime to our customers going forward, which has always been a major thorn in our side.
I've actually talked to 3 different service providers, cloud service providers, that actually inked deals to move to the Veeam Data Cloud. And I know in the beginning that was kind of contentious for some folks, but it's interesting. Apparently, whatever happened at VeeamON, I got hit through. I do some consulting. Some of our advertising is on Fiverr and Upwork and stuff. And I actually had a brand new silver partner that came about, and they're like, "Can you give us this overview of how to build our business, if you will?" And I was like, "Yeah, absolutely." So I'm really excited that I get to be like, this is how we used to build it. And feel free to do this with all this CapEx and all this other nonsense, or Veeam Data Cloud. If I'm starting it today in 2025, I'm all in there right now. And knowing that, let's say it has some, it's missing some feature in there right now compared to a traditional installation. There's ways to overcome it through other partners and whatnot. Like there's add-on portals you can do through the Veeam network. There's other automation testing you can do through there, but more and more gets wrapped into Veeam Data Cloud. If you're building your business today on it, you don't have to hire everybody like we did. There's a reason why Jonah and I got so much into Veeam APIs and whatnot. It's because we had to build custom portals, and we worked with Vitaly back in the day to help bring about the Veeam Service Provider Console, because that wasn't a thing. And the claim to fame I love is when you query the API and you get CPU and RAM and disk allocations. We fought for that because we had to show Veeam, if I'm building all of these customer sites, I have to now go through and configure all the VMs to spec. If I could pull it through API, it's real time in my configuration database. I can now build the customer to the same specs and go. And Veeam's been going and going and going. Well, imagine a world with VDC where you're up there and guess what? Now it's in there automatically. The feature request hits and you get that hide knowledge. Boom, everybody gets the feature benefit right there. And you're not going, well, crap, how do I change my API? What do I do to hook to my configuration database? I mean, the worst thing in the world was the day when Veeam would announce a new version, but it was the best day ever because you got new toys. Unfortunately, I like to joke and say, just didn't have batteries to run them. It was like the world's worst gift.
Yeah. What 20 PowerShell commandlets changed in Veeam version 11, but that we have to fix so our portal will work with the new release before we can give the customers the green light to upgrade? Because I still kind of live in that world.
It's getting better.
We're working internally to start moving over to Service Provider Console. We're having discussions around things like Veeam Data Cloud, because just the operational costs of data centers, infrastructure, hypervisor licensing, especially with all this Broadcom stuff going on, and all of the labor even just to support the infrastructure and to keep the portals up to date before you even get into any of the billing, the sales, the support teams. Veeam Data Cloud, especially for service providers, really not that much more expensive than just the VV365 licensing. So when you factor in all those other things, it's almost cheaper or the same to just have Veeam run it. And, for probably 90% of your customers, that's your cookie cutter offering that it'll serve all the needs they want. And if they want something more specialized beyond that, that's when you can talk about bringing it in-house or hosting it yourself in the public cloud.
Yeah, and it's interesting. We had Will Bassich on an earlier episode. He was my former partner with Global Data Vault, and he's a CFO by trade. And so he works for with Fortium Partners, which is fractional CFOs. And we were talking through some things, and it reminded me of a lot of times you build a technology business, and the smart ones look at this evil word called EBITDA. And it's all about your valuation and multiplier. And I think that's the only hiccup I could see in this world. And it has nothing to do with the better tech. It's if I capitalize an investment, it looks like one way on a balance sheet. But if I OPEX it, it looks a different way and it affects my EBITDA severely. And so I can't imagine Veeam finding a way to change that because it's still an op. But I would think as we were talking about technology changing things, man, I will bet you money that accounting rules will change at some point, because I know one that we found back in the day was if I put development efforts in through consulting to bring a product to market, I could write that as a capital expense. And I'm not an accountant, so don't just do this stuff. But basically we could capitalize that and wrap it because it's a development to a product, and it went from an operational payroll expense into a cap, and it shifted the balance sheet all day long. So I'm thinking more of that's going to go out there as we see that. I mean, Rick, what's your thoughts on this? You're on the pulse of VDC. You're on the stage. I mean, what's going on there that was cool and wild up there? Because I saw you click nexting up some cool stuff up there.
Yeah. So, well, on that financial topic, one comment I'll say there is that it does matter. I, I, I do think there is a slight preference to the OpEx model from a financial allocation standpoint. And with this like idea that you turn it off and walk away. Okay. Now I'll be the first to say these things are sticky because you can't turn off basically part of your compliance strategy of protecting data. Okay. So yes, it's categorized a certain way, but it carries kind of a perpetual business value. So just a caution on some of these financial games. Veeam Data Cloud, it is by far the most strategic thing we've undertaken here at Veeam since I've been here, this is my 15th year. And I'll be honest with you, I'm blown away by what they're doing. And for those who had a chance to watch the keynotes or attend, we showed the new One UI where the Entra and Salesforce product exists, and it's reasonable to expect the M365 product will be ported in there too. That is the direction. It's just there's a big market share of the deployed M365 on the current iteration, which was actually built on what we acquired in 2023. So, and it's grown. The Veeam Touch is real. It overnight 10x. It's wild. But anyways, what I see going on is this very attractive, very interesting phenomena where the Veeam Data Platform set of products, like the stuff that Anton makes, is then taken in, still installed, configured, managed on one zone, like the Veeam software appliance. That's going to happen. But then those products delivered in Veeam Data Cloud. That is really attractive. Customers have the choice. To Jonah's point, I think most customers can cover a lot of ground with Veeam Data Cloud. Sure, some people are going to be anti-hosted and such. No problem. We got an answer there. I love this choose your own adventure and then managed service providers, cloud service providers as well, with door number 3 of a bunch of value add angles. But the magic is going to be the backup storage vault. It's my boss Dave likes to call it's the Veeam data fabric. And these AI capabilities, now I'm going a little bit into the future. I'm so stoked about some of those things. And there's a lot of work. There's a lot of controls. There's a lot of security, compliance, governance conversations that I remember someone from Europe said, very cool, but and they went on all of their concerns, and they're not wrong. We have some things to put around it. So I think it's really an exciting time in the sense of what we have coming is the most perpetual product output I personally have ever seen on the Veeam product team. And I keep thinking, well, how big can this get? Well, we're going to get bigger. It's going to get bigger soon. I'll just say it that way.
I don't know, man. Believe it or not, this is crazy. I own a company. I have employees, and I look at the job postings at Veeam all the time. And every now and then I'm just like, what cool crap is working over there? And then this like sweetheart like job pops up, and I'm just like, oh, that might be some fun stuff to work on. And I'm like, can I keep the company? Can I just like go over there and I'll moonlight here? Like, what does that look like? Because there's just so many things out there you look at and you're like, God, it'd be fun to be part of the mothership. I'd lose community standing and whatnot. And, Joe and I have talked about this over the years. It's just like, man, look at this one thing over there they're doing. That's so cool. Could you imagine working on that team with Veeam money, Veeam development, the talent, the everything? And you're on an outside, like we're in the ecosystem, but we're like, that could be so wicked, man. So I, believe it or not, love the Veeam job postings. I almost wonder sometimes it's kind of how like, where we're going to invade somewhere in the world is if you look at the government contracts. And if you see contracts pop up for a certain country, you're like, we're doing something over there because they're looking for contractors to do this, right? So
Shadow roadmap, eh?
yeah, exactly. I'm giving away my signature. Jonah, what sort of stuff did I shared Linux being my biggie? What were some of the things you saw out there that you loved at VeeamON?
So yeah, I mean, like I said, high availability is going to be great as a service provider, and I'd say probably my number two up there was, the whole starting in Q3, new SaaS products will have day one service provider support in BDC, just because new products and new functionalities have kind of almost been the bane of my existence. Going back to your duality of love-hate relationship of a new release, it's like, oh, here's version 10, it has CDP. Only if you want to do it locally. You got to wait till version 11 or really version 12 when it's mature to do it as a service provider. And look at us 2 or even 3 years later now, still no Salesforce self-hosted capabilities as a service provider, at least at scale with things like multi-tenancy and integration into our own portals. So to see like, mind you, I have no idea what's on the roadmap. I'm just pulling this out of my rear end when I say this product, so no one get any ideas. But, hypothetically, if a Google Workspace backup were to launch in Q3 or Q4, as a service provider, I wouldn't have to wait till, V3 or V4 or later to be able to properly offer that. I could just sign them up with Veeam Data Cloud and start selling that day one. Have the full multi-tenancy capabilities that I need.
Yeah, 2 or 3 years ago, you guys were at VeeamON. You were presenting. You had a booth, I had a booth, and I looked across the way, and you guys were announcing Salesforce backups. And I remember a lot of the other presenters were like, how the hell did they do that? That's not even like something that Veeam can do with a cloud provider. And some of the other vanguards were like, yeah, well, I'm sure Jonah figured something with that. You think he'd tell us? And yeah, he did. But it's interesting to see that not being a thing. And I know it's not a high, I mean, I don't get a lot of phone calls from people. When Veeam does send us business through the VASP, I think one time I had a Salesforce call come in, and Jonah, I had asked you because you did some of the work behind, and I went to the meeting and I was just like, I hate joining a sales call where you want expertise. And I literally walk out of the call and I'm like, please don't pay for expertise. You could do this yourself. Even just in this 1 hour meeting, I can show you what you'll do. Like, yes, I'll take your money. And that leads me to believe something that I'm starting to realize about Veeam as well is I see there's TAMs out there now. There's more pro services, and I'm on the VASP side. So I'm like, wait, our bread and butter is pro services. And I talked to this guy who had a really interesting analogy for me. And I don't know that the partners have really picked up on it, but it's pretty revolutionized. He was like, have you ever gone and tried to start a real at scale Microsoft 365 project? And it can be overwhelming for the best engineer in the world. But Microsoft is like, buy it from us, or here's our partners that will give you the same Microsoft, but they've done it so many times. You're getting that expertise there, and to the point where they're doing the implement, but they're staying around for the administration and the health checking. And this person told me as a fast, they were like, you probably should start adopting that network. You go to the VDC, you go to the whatever, and you're like, yeah, you don't need me, but I have that business world experience. I have that. I've been through the product iterations. I have the connections over there to be there. And it's just kind of that shift of your business. And then I remember going back, I think the book was From Good to Great, and they talked about different companies. And I remember the failures in there. And we go back and we're like, why is Kodak not in business when they owned the original patents for digital photography? And there's story after story about businesses just not evolving. And Veeam evolves. And if we're hitching our stars to Veeam, which on this podcast we have, it's looking at it and going, well, if they're moving in that direction, how do I align with them to not just support, but go back to see that advantage, if you will? As an early cloud service provider, people ask, well, how did you grow at Platinum? How did you sell it? How did you whatever? And it sounds stupid to say, but sometimes I'm like, it's kind of like dumb luck sometimes. I know we did a lot of right things. We did some wrong things, but like a lot of it was right place, right time, relational. How do you recreate that now that you're worried about the Veeam Data Cloud? But how can you have that same mindset to go, what's the good? Where can I align and where can I grow with Veeam? Because to what Rick, you said, Veeam, it's in your DNA about partner and relationship. So why would that change? It's just, you've seen something shift in the market. We should shift with. So,
Well, you gotta take an advantage when you can. And what I mean by that is the Veeam Data Cloud, the as a service, will be a big disruption of. It's already started, honestly. Really, the latter part of last decade through now, and maybe Salesforce was ahead of all that time, and look where they are now. Yeah, but I talk to people who are looking at Veeam stuff one way or Veeam stuff through Veeam Data Cloud, and I say, look, let me tell you about two things you won't have to do. You won't have to do patching and updates. So there's, I think it's reasonable to say that could be 2 to 3 hours of change controls a month. I'm just making up a number. So that's hard time back to you as an organization. And the other thing I say about consuming these Veeam protection as a service is, and by the way, a service provider can do that same outcome, and the same for this next one too. The other big benefit is you, customer, do not have to be an expert in sizing stuff in the cloud. That's hard to do, to get right.
Sure.
Feeds and feeds and over provisioning. And if you want to do, especially something like Microsoft 365, if you want to do that on, best, it's probably best in Azure. And then you're paying for that and you want to use it efficiently. Like, here's just a little point I'll share. Internally, we have a bunch of proxies that do the work for Veeam Data Cloud for Microsoft 365. They design these proxies to be, this is an old number. I don't know if it's still the case, but they design and target them to be perpetually 98 to 100% busy, because that means they're 98 to 100% cost effective. Otherwise, they're not. So think about that.
I almost wonder in the development cycles, Veeam decides to do Veeam Data Cloud. They do M365 offering. They pop it all out. Then shortly after, if my timeline's remembering it correctly, we start seeing the shift in V8 and we start seeing proxy pools and all these other things. It's almost as if Mothership took this product, said, we need to scale this wide. Oh, wait, we're seeing these limitations that their service providers had. Boom, they launch and overcome. And then they're like, now let's gift that back into this other arena, if you will. So suddenly you're starting seeing product development become more in line, because now Veeam as a service provider, not the appropriate term, but that's maybe why we're seeing that ripple across into same day releases. And, I'm not expecting any of the secret sauce from you, Rick, but
I don't know it. Well, I have access to it, but I try to stay away from too much of the details. I think plausible deniability is good sometimes.
oh yeah.
Yeah, and I have some theories, but I'm not going to go wildly speculate on a podcast where who knows.
Let's save that for the bar. Yeah.
Well, we're coming down to kind of our last 10 minutes here, because we try not to trap people too long. Rick, it's been a great conversation. I kind of want to give everybody final thoughts here. Anything in the world. I don't care if it's in the news today. I don't care if it's VeeamON, whatever. Like, thoughts and ponderings or comments of anything we've spoken about or something we've mixed. So shameless plugs as well. But Rick, you don't need a shameless plug. You're Rick. You're Veeam. You're here. You're the guy. We all.
I'm just gonna. My final thought is gonna end where I started. I just want to say a big thanks to both of you and some of the rock stars in the Veeam community. That is a unique differentiator that Veeam has in the market, and we owe a big thanks to that. That's the only plug I want to drop. So just a big thank you to the community.
Well, that community thanks you too. I mean, I know myself helped getting out to VeeamON this year as part of the community. Like I was like, where are we going to go on out? Hey, we have some slots, boom, out there. What vendor does that for you? Right. And then, of course, the V100 Summit. I mean, I tell everybody all the time, like it's a double-edged sword, man. Like you're encouraging people to apply, but you're like, oh, I'm bringing in more competition. But we always put that out there because it's such an amazing program. Like just not even the presentations we get, a little bit of the secret sauce, but just even meeting fellow powered Veeam users who I can just pick up the phone. And like we had Nico Stein on a couple months ago or so, and he was like, yeah, that whole CrowdStrike thing. He was talking about changing the bootloader menus to put, the different boot medias in there. And I was like, holy crap, man, like that's genius. It's so blatantly obvious to you, but you don't think to do it. And it was like he just off the cuffs makes the comment one day. That's what the community has been for me, is just a passing comment. And you're like, oh my gosh, meeting Jim Jones in the bar while I'm literally speaking to one of my clients that's a cloud provider. Jim stops, talks to me. We're sharing stuff and whatever. And I'll share this one. Former Vanguard, Greg Talone, right? He and I are on a sales call one day with one of my clients, and we're talking about this stuff. And there's about 10 different people from this client on the call. And one guy goes, holy crap, we're like talking to like two Veeam gurus here. They were like, the price of admission just for this meeting was over the top. And I'm like, we're just like going on all because it was hilarious. Somebody found a statement about sober on Greg's Cloud IVR's website that it wasn't compatible. And so he's explaining why. And I'm like, well, point of order, because we set the jobs up like this. It was so wickedly cool. And these guys we're just hashing it out, and they're loving it. And I realized, someone told me when you fly with eagles, you raise up to their level. When you soar with ducks, you sink, and you're soaring with the eagles in the community program. It's just excellence over there, Rick. You guys do a great job with it.
That's cool. That's great to hear. Like those stories of, in fact, we, was it at VeeamON? Yeah, I think it was VeeamON one year. We had a couple of folks, Matt Crape, Jim, maybe one or two others, talk about how it's impacted their career journey. And like, hey, that was not I'm not in the business of changing people's lives, but I do want to like just make something good, but improving their life, that's different. Whoa, that's heavy.
Oh yeah. And all right, Jonah, it's time for your thoughts. What plot us away? That's a word.
Yeah, I mean, I said it before with Maddie and Safi on the call, and I still stand by it. I wouldn't be where I am today without the Veeam community and the Vanguard program, It was like drinking from a fire hose, even more so than just going to a service provider and learning IT and Veeam drinking from a fire hose. And yeah, it's astonishing the knowledgeable people you're around, especially at some of these summits. Like I remember previous years, I'd be out at a bar and it would be like, oh, look, there's Danny Allen, one of the C-levels at Veeam. And now he's all over doing all this cool AI stuff for developers at Sneaker, however it's pronounced.
Well, I look at the Vanguard program. It's funny. One day my boss called me in and he was like, you should be in Vanguard. And I was like, whatever, dude. What is this? I don't even know what this is. And this was years ago. I was like, whatever. And I heard a little bit about it and I was like, put Jonah in that program. Like, go try to rally the troops to go. So Jonah goes off and comes back with all this cool crap and whatever. And then I was like, well, Steven knew. We've raised him up to these things. I like to joke. I knew Steven when he was our level 1 support guy. And, I always believed, as a C level, raising up your team. So I was like, let's get Steven in there. Well, we sell the business. And I'm like, well, this sucks. They're both in the program. I don't know if I was worthy, but I was so envious of it. Not because of the title, but what they were coming back with. And I was like, any company worth their salt should be trying to get their people into the community because it will pay dividends. It's like back in the day, I fought in the service provider world to say, not only do I want to get so much off of my Veeam points by my size, I demand Veeam training. And I fought and fought and fought. And they're like, oh, that costs money. That costs money. And the first year they gave it to us, we saw revenue jump like 60%. And we traced it back to knowledgeable engineers being able to go, oh, you should do something. And I laughed because sales was all about M365 when it dropped out. It was the point where they're like, I don't want to talk to you, sales guy. They would call our support desk and try to get someone like Jonah on the phone or somebody else and be like, all right, sales guy, talk to me. What's the skinny? Is this crap or should we do it? And they'd be like, no, all day long. You should be doing it for these reasons. This is how it works. They go back to sales. Sales was thinking they're getting these huge wins because they're great marketing. It was really the knowledge. And then going into the community, it's crazy because I've talked to Vanguards that had to have gone at their own where their companies don't support them. And I'm like, do they not know the value you bring back in this? It's the best thing you can do. What do you drop them in November, Rickish? November?
We take nominations for Vanguards towards the end of a calendar year. Legends are ramped up twice a year based on the community hub activity. There's also above and beyond user group leaders, which are just around the world in their own markets. And then there's even the Rising Star program, which is a kind of subjective, opportunistic thing. And the takeaway from that is there's many modes into the Veeam 100, right? And I'm almost embarrassed to hear the good stuff about it, but no, fantastic perspective. And, we generally want to find the folks where they are.
Well, I like to shout out the legends. I'm not a legend. I'm a Vanguard. And I think those legends, God's honest truths, are the hardest working people in showbiz. They put out so much. Like we get on here, we're user group leaders. Jonah and I help with the hackathon. He's on automation desk. Like we do these community things. To me, those things are fun. Those legends, I mean, they're hammering away at the keyboard, posting. They're reading, they're consuming, they're growing. I'm like, those guys work their butts off. So
Dude,
I shout them out.
Oh, dude, we have data on this. Yes, they're super visible, but we have data that I'm not really at liberty to say here, but for a B2B benchmark, we are off the charts in what they call peer-to-peer answers, like answers not given by an employee to questions and things like that. That is real. I mean, that's saving support cases, and then there's an average cost to a support case. This community is doing good things, and I'm so lucky with those folks and so many more that we didn't mention.
Awesome. Well, I think that was a great way to wrap it. Rickatron, thank you for being here today. Pleasure having you. Look forward to having you back again. And Jonah, Cyber Fortress, go check them out if you need some cloud work. That's your guy.
Yeah, Bounce, Draz, M365, maybe some Veeam Data Cloud later this year.
Different dev, you know what? We can get you up and running. Boring, but we like doing it. What do we like? Regular involvement. We love audits. We love being that third set of eyes, if you will, looking over your Veeam environment, documenting it, helping fight those evil cyber insurance carriers and those things. So check us all out, read the show notes, and tune in next time.
Whether you're a seasoned solutionist or just starting out, the Rebel Devs podcast is a must listen. So join us. Comment, share, and subscribe. Be part of the Rebel Devs.